Hello and welcome to today's edition of Route 664, The Road to Human Kindness. I'm your host, Les Winston, and I'm with you every Thursday here from the community newspaper, beautiful studio in South Miami. And we talk about endowing America. This project of Endow America Network Foundation is one which we believe will change the nature of our financial planning in the country. We think that the use of philanthropy and the idea of charitable planning gifts are very important. They're a way for us to improve the lives of ourselves and also our family as well as our community. And we can do so much if we can endow the nonprofit organizations and let them work their magic without having to worry about raising money. That's the ultimate goal, to change the country from 30 trillion in debt to 30 trillion in endowment controlled in the NGOs in your local communities. That's a lot to say in a little bit, but it's very important that we change things. We have a very significant problem in the country. We have a huge debt that needs to be alleviated, and the only way to do that is to get our needs from government changed. We need to change the way government spends money and the way the government is granting money to non-governmental organizations. It's not that that's a bad thing. It's just it's not really correct. If you think about it, government granting to non-governmental organizations is taking your tax dollars after they've been through the tax mill and now they're giving them back to the nonprofit organizations in your community. Why not give it to them directly? And when you give directly today, using some of the things that the Congress gave us way back in 1969, you can also get something back from that. And that's the beauty of social charity. Like Social Security, it sounds very similar. Social Security is they take and they give you back. With social charity, you give and you get back. And that's a better way of dealing with our problems locally in our communities, making sure that services can be paid for that people need, that what our social needs are. We have, from time to time, we interview very important people on the program, people who are professional philanthropic advisors, people who have spent their careers dealing in philanthropy and using philanthropic planning as a part of their practices or part of their business organizations. And my guest this morning is Emanuel Kallina. Emanuel Kallina is the person that I consider one of the most brilliant minds, legal minds in the area of charitable financial planning. A good friend of mine, Emil. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Good to see you this morning.
Good to see you too. I get charitable planning. I subscribe to charitableplanning.com. And every day now I'm duty bound to read what I get. And it's of course, of great interest to me because that's what my field is. And I know that you're related to that. Is that your own website, Emil?
Yeah, it is a website that I started up with some other people, and I'm the primary editor and owner. So, yes.
Well, it's great. People who are, if you're out there and you're a professional philanthropic advisor or you want to become a professional philanthropic advisor, you need to look at charitableplanning.com. It's a very, very valuable resource. And there was something on there today. One of the things that we talk about a lot on the program is the tax planning aspect of life, that charitable planning can help to alleviate taxes while doing some really good things for the community. And I know that you are you were suggesting in our earlier conversation that the topic of what to do with IRAs, how are IRAs and other how are other qualified plans, how can they be changed in a way to alleviate some of the tax issues and some of the other issues? Could you elaborate a little bit on that type of planning, Emil?
Sure. I'll tell you a story that is very personal to me because it's about my planning for my family.
Okay.
And you can easily extrapolate from there. But I was looking at my estate plan, wondering how I would leave assets. If my wife, for example, survived me, I could leave my IRA to her, and she could roll it over. But given the life expectancy in her family, she's probably going to outlive the life expectancy tables, even the new tables that came into being this year. And I also was in a position of having done estate planning for 45 plus years. I'm very aware of second husbands. And so my wife is very attractive, younger than me, and I wasn't interested in funding her second husband's retirement.
Okay.
And so I looked at the possibilities. The Secure Act got passed that limits distributions, obviously, of IRA over time, wiped out many of the ability, wiped out the ability of many of us to do inherited IRAs with beneficiaries other than our spouses. And so I was looking at that, and I came across an idea, which was to have the IRA paid to a charitable remainder trust at my death, and set it up for a 5% payout, and then have as a secondary beneficiary my children. And so I looked at that, and I ran the math, and I couldn't qualify with the minimum 10% charitable remainder. So I ran the math a little bit more, and I concluded, well, I could set up one trust for each my wife and each one of our daughters separately, and we could qualify that as what we call a TCRUT, testamentary charitable remainder unitrust.
A testamentary charitable remainder unitrust. Okay. And we get into a lot of these cruts and crats and grats and these letters. They mean the words that are shortened by the letters that we give them. And you have now expressed a TCRAT, not a TCRUT, rather. TCRUT. Okay. So tell the listening audience what that accomplishes in briefly.
Yeah. In my particular case, what it does is it allows me to leave my IRA, which is a large part of my estate, to my wife for life. And then when she dies, it can benefit, let's say, my oldest daughter for life. And then I set up a second one that does my wife for life, my second oldest daughter for her life, and so on for the third daughter. What it accomplishes is it keeps the asset, the IRA, in the family. We avoid second husbands. We avoid son-in-laws, in my case, that might not end up being married to my children down the road, given the incidence of divorce.
So it's controlling the assets of your family, primary family asset, and making sure that it's going generation to generation as you want it to go without any impairment. Is that
correct?
Fair to say?
Yes.
Is there a tax effect as well, Emil?
Yes. The tax implications of it are when the IRA is paid at my death to the testamentary charitable remainder trust. It's not taxable.
Okay. Ordinarily, and it would be taxable ordinarily. How much would the government take from something like that?
Well, depending upon who's in power in Congress, it could be 40 or 50%. If you live in California, it could be pushing 60%. Okay. So the benefit of this is we get to stretch the payment out for a long period of time. We do asset protection along the way. We reduce our income taxes, and although it might create some estate tax implications, depending on how low the exemption is, that's something you can work around. When you set up a CRT that runs for the life of one beneficiary, your spouse, and then you have a secondary beneficiary, it's not a valid, qualified, terminable interest trust under the regs. And so I won't get into the detail, but at any rate, I'm in a position of limiting the income taxes and limiting estate taxes if they exist, and helping charity. The charitable remainder trust can dump into a donor advised fund, and my children can direct or grandchildren where it goes.
So all of the things that you've accomplished with doing that, the charitable remainder trust has been around for a long time.
Correct. Since 1969, it was codified in the code changes that year.
Okay, and yet this is it's a device that's been created by Congress. It's been there for 50 years. How many people do you think know how to use charitable trust like that? I mean, it's a tool that they gave us, and why aren't we using them?
Well, I think we went through a period of time in the 90s, late 80s and the 90s up to 2000, when values were extremely high and tax rates were extremely high, and then values dropped. Tech bubble in 2000, and income taxes dropped, and a lot of people stopped using the CRT as a financial, estate planning, and charitable planning vehicle because it just was not as attractive as it used to be. And so when values are up and when tax rates are up, that's when the CRT, in my opinion, becomes most beneficial. Okay.
So the social security concept of what we talk about as what we call social security is the ability to create an income that can be relied on, and that's basically what you have tailored your retirement plan that would ordinarily go through a lot of it would be handled in a completely different way, and you've altered that by utilizing a social security device, the charitable remainder unit trust, the testamentary charitable remainder unit trust. So if you're out there listening in the listening audience, and you have and you're involved in estate planning for yourself, and you have as one of your largest assets a qualified plan like an IRA or rollover from a 401k, whatever the origin of that protected money, of that qualified money, this would be something to consider as a way to help generation to generation. And Emil, if the individuals are doing this, how much work is involved in something like that? How much time does somebody have to put into that? And what is the commitment that an individual would have to make if they wanted to work with a professional philanthropic advisor to do that?
Well, one of the major problems you run into with this structure, believe it or not, these are practical issues that come into play, not tax, but is that many times your IRA custodian doesn't want to recognize your charitable remainder trust or even a charity as a qualified beneficiary of it. And so we figured a way to get around it. I said, well, what would happen if you created a charitable remainder trust today, but you made it revocable so that it didn't become effective until date of death, and you didn't have all the forms to file, and you fund it with $100, get an employer ID number, and talk with your whoever is handling your investments, and say to the custodian, on my death, I want the IRA paid over to my revocable charitable remainder trust. Will you do that? Mm-hmm. And I'm in the process of doing that right now with a major provider, and so a major custodian. And so I thought I was really come up with a good idea. And then, of course, there's nothing new under the sun.
No.
And I was doing my research on it and found that out, of course, Conrad Teitel had come up with this concept 40 years ago. So
And
Connie
it's been in the dustbin.
yes, and Connie is, needless to say, preeminent thinker in our area, and helped was involved in the '69 Act when it was passed. He was down there in Washington. So I thought I was smart, but I found out nothing's new under the sun, and Conrad beat me to it by 40 years. So
my guest is Emanuel Kallina. Emil is a world-renowned attorney and has done a lot of creative work. Emil, I've always, when we used to go to the conferences together, I used to see you there all the time, and I always had the feeling that if there was an issue about charitable planning, a legal issue, it was ask Emil. Ask Emil. And appreciate your spending time with us this morning on Route 664, the Road to Human Kindness. You are a leader in this area, and I certainly appreciate the use of renting your brain for this morning. It's very valuable for folks to hear and to see that there are ways to do things that people may not have thought of before or have been thought of before, but they need to be resurrected in some cases. But they are great planning tools, and having proper guidance is important. So Emil can be reached at Emanuel Kallina at the Kallina and Associates. And also is listed on our website at socialcharity.org. Find an advisor. Emil, you will be there. If you're not there now, you'll be there, and this recording will be there actually, so that folks can go listen to it actually. So that's a good thing. And thank you. Is there one piece of final advice that you'd like to give to our listening audience with regard to thinking about philanthropy?
I just I'm committed to philanthropy. I've done the CRT in this structure wouldn't leave much to charity, but I've provided for charity through donor advised funds and other vehicles like a pooled income fund. So I don't. If somebody's looking at this, they'll say it's going to be a long time before charity benefits. But the reality is I benefited charity through other techniques. And I just didn't want people to think that this was a way of avoiding giving to charity for 50 years or 60 years. We've done that in other manners, in other ways. So just wanted people to know.
So there's current and future giving, and this would come under the heading of planned giving. And we also hope that the charities will outlive us and that they'll be able to reap the benefits of what we create in some of these devices. Thanks again for joining us, Emil. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Les, for the opportunity.
Absolutely. We'll talk again.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So my next guest is an interesting individual. We did this interview a little while ago. I thought that we would give you a little break from financial planning about bread, how to pass your bread on to the next people, how to avoid paying taxes on bread, because bread is that colloquial word for money. But in reality, there are people out there who are bread advisors and bread consultants. And one of them joins me now on Route 664, the Road to Human Kindness. We're joined by Alan Levitz. So welcome to today's edition of Route 664, the Road to Human Kindness. And this program is about financial planning, and financial planning involves the colloquial word bread. We can toy around with that a little bit when we get into this conversation with my next guest, Alan Levitz. Alan is a bread consultant, a bread advisor, and works for New York bakeries, right?
Yes.
And tell me, we do financial planning, and bread is, people use the term bread for money, but in your case, it's really the bread. You actually are a bread advisor. So tell me what a bread advisor does.
Well, first of all, let me tell you that the business has been very crummy, but if you don't loaf, you can make dough.
Okay, I like that. So the crummy business of bread advising starts with what? What do you do first when you're a bread advisor?
Well, what happens is a restaurant is looking for somebody to supply them with their bread needs. So what happens is at that particular point, they either contact us or the easiest analogy would be I go to a restaurant and I'm sitting in the restaurant and they bring out the bread because the first thing that you eat when you go into a restaurant is the bread.
Right. That's what they
So
put down with the butter, and they kind of when you're because people are ravenous when they get there. Yeah.
Right. So that's the thing that determines the quality of your meal. So what happens? Yes. So what happens is I usually take my card, I go into the kitchen, go over to the chef, hand him my card, and say to him, I'd like to make a presentation of what we suggest that you would use as your bread. Or sometimes what happens is the quality of the bread that they are using would not meet a standard, okay, of a good bread consultant.
So that's an interesting. I mean, the whole concept that people who go to restaurants, whether they're high end or low end restaurants, the first thing they do is they usually provide you with a basket of bread or some sort of appetizer or something to slake your appetite in a way.
But before they bring out the appetizer, the first thing they put on the table is bread.
Yeah, in the higher quality restaurants.
Any restaurant, I mean, other than if you're at a deli and you're going to order a sandwich. But if you take like Moe's, for instance, all right, when you sit down for dinner there, the first thing they bring you out is a basket of bread.
Right, and I remember even Moe's is a deli, and so is so was Rascal House. Rascal House was.
Rascal House didn't give you bread. Rascal House had their own. The one on Collins Avenue had their own ovens, and they would bake their own Danish and give you Danish rather than and tiny little muffins that they would make themselves. The best analogy that I can give you, you remember when you went to Joe's Stone Crab?
Sure.
The first thing they would put on the table would be a basket of bread. In that basket of bread, there was a dark bread with raisins in it.
Yes.
So that was how New York bakers first got started.
No
because
kidding.
That bread, all the bread that was served at Joe's came from New York bakers. That bread was as famous as the stone crabs. People would come in and they would order extra, give me another basket of bread, give me another basket of bread. So that was, something where, a New York baker.
Let me ask you, who advised them to do that, Joe? Is that you?
No, that was before my time.
Yeah.
Okay. And the person who owned the bakery at that time was Zimmerman. And she had a little bakery on Washington Avenue. And what happened was that little bakery was producing bread, for the top of the line restaurants. They make the finest kosher rye bread or kosher style rye bread.
Did they supply the famous restaurant?
They supplied the famous restaurant.
Right. On Washington.
With the rye, and out of Washington, when they moved to the big plant, they were also known as Butterflake Bakery.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
yeah.
And Butterflake Bakery supplied like 3 or 4 states. So I don't know if the funny story is that the owner, hired the owner of Butterflake and hired him as her president of distribution and manufacturing of the bakery.
Right.
And they were doing so well, it was more economical for her to marry him than to keep him as the president.
Yeah, she moved in with the chief. Yeah, it's
Right. Or the chief that moved in with her.
That's really. So, we're going down memory lane a little bit with some of these restaurants, but today there are, tell me a little bit about some of the restaurants that you're working with today.
Well,
here locally. You're in South Florida. I think the folks need to know that, right? You're here in
Aventura.
Aventura. So we met you actually at the Aventura Sunny Isles Beach Chamber of Commerce meeting.
Right.
And was very intrigued by what you do. I mean, the profession is very. I don't know many other bread advisors. In fact, you're the first one that I ever met, and the only one I've ever met. So, tell me what other restaurants you're working with now locally
everything in Aventura, okay, and just about everything in Sunny Isle, and Miami Beach. Like the Mandolin, Prime 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Those are usually the restaurants that require something a little out of the ordinary.
Right.
That's what that's where we come in to supply them.
So that raisin pumpernickel bread, which is what you were talking about Joe's, that's still in Joe's. And that's kind of like
other than they no longer use New York bakers, and that's why when people go there, they say, "Well, this isn't the bread that I used to get. This isn't the bread that I used to get," because it became a financial thing. Because they require that you deliver the bread 3 times a day. And the bread had to stand up in the box rather than lay flat. Right. So it became more of a customized job, and it became something. It's like anything else. If you want something like really different, and you want an extra delivery, right. I mean that eats up into your cash profit.
Right.
So the thing is, they found somebody that would do it for less, not the same quality. We'll do it for less, and that's what happened. But you take somebody like the Palm, okay?
Right.
We supply that's one of my clients was the Palm, and I would have to deliver the bread myself personally on Sunday because we don't work on Saturday, and
right.
we're closed because we're kosher.
Right.
And I would have to personally deliver the bread at 3:00 in the afternoon on Sunday. You
got to have it fresh, obviously, because nobody wants to eat stale rolls.
Well, the thing is that that was their particular requirement. Of course, that became a major problem between my wife and myself, because we couldn't go anywhere on Sunday because I had to be at the plant at 3:00 to personally hand deliver the bread rather than put it on the truck. But if you go to like all the flashback diners, that mini challah that they make, that's something
that's yours. The mini challah. Oh,
yes, the mini challahs.
Yeah.
And we're the only one that is 100% kosher. We're ROB. All right, which is like the highest rating that you can get in as being kosher. So a lot of the caterers, that in the hotels that require kosher, use us as their supplier or their baker.
My guest is Alan Levitz. Alan is a bread advisor, a bread consultant. He's somebody that.
Thank you. Let's not underplay my official title.
No, it's actually very interesting because you have to have a very discerning and interesting palate in order to be able to determine which bread is going to fit into this restaurant. Certainly, I mean, I've had those the dark rolls with the onions inside.
Yes,
those are a specialty at Palm. You can't get enough of those.
Right. Well, that's one of our items.
Yeah. And I think it's important that the listening audience is aware that it's an art form. We're talking about artistry in the creation of some of these things. So have you ever created anything for a restaurant specifically that wasn't available anywhere else?
Well, everything's available. It becomes a matter of how well you do it.
Right.
That's the. In other words, everybody makes a hamburger bun. You know what I mean? You could buy hamburger buns, that they serve in Burger King.
Right.
As compared to a brioche, egg washed a burger bun, that makes the hamburger taste better than just a BK, burger,
potato bun. Those are potato buns.
Right,
yeah.
right. But they're not even potato buns. The ones those are just plain white bread.
We're not knocking Burger King, folks.
No, but it's McDonald's does the same.
For the discerning palate, for the people who out there who understand bread and butter and how good that can be in a restaurant when you sit down and getting ready to have your meal.
Right.
Alan Levitz is the guy that knows more about this than anybody else in the entire world at this point that I'm aware of.
At this particular point, there are other bread consultants, but not in South Florida, to my knowledge.
Yeah, well, Alan, thank you very much. This is an amazing bit of education. You kind of take it for granted when you go in. You just assume that what you're getting served is, this is what somebody came up with in the kitchen, but there's a lot more to it, all behind the scenes. And that's one of the things about people who are professional at what they do. And you're a professional bread consultant and advisor for New York Bakeries. And we thank you very much for joining us on Route 64, the Road to Human Kindness. Road to Human Kindness has got a lot of bread in it. So we want to spread the word about good bread. Thank you very much, Alan. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay.
Yes.
Bye.
How do people reach you? How do they get, if a restaurateur is listening to our program today or somebody wants to get bread from a kosher bakery and get unique items, how do they get in touch with you?
Well, they can use my email address, which is New York Bread Guy. New
York Bread Guy. I love it. At AOL.com. New York Bread Guy at AOL.com. Hey, Joey Pots and Pans and Billy Bag of Donuts. I love your story.
I will leave you with this. I don't know if you can use this. It's Tonto and the Long Ranger were on a camping trip.
Right.
In the middle of the night, Tonto wakes up the Long Ranger and says, "Look up at the sky and tell me what you see." The Long Ranger says, "As a person with great knowledge of astronomy, I see there are many stars and planets that are in the sky. As an astrologer, I also know that Jupiter is rising, so that we're no longer in the age of Aquarius. Since there are no clouds in the sky, a meteorologist would say there would be no rain tonight in the evening." And Tonto says, "You are the dumbest white person I ever met." and he says, "Well, what do you see when you look up in the sky, Tonto?" He says, "Somebody stole our tent."
Thank you, Alan, for that. Appreciate that. And the listening audience is going to enjoy that. Thank you very much for joining us on Route 664, the Road to Human Kindness. And oh, God. Okay, that was my friend Alan Levitz and the bread guy. Well, we want to entertain you as well. You know that we care about you, and we hope that you are getting something from what we're talking about, whether it's bread, that kind of bread, or the real bread. And we want you to be knowledgeable. We want you to be informed taxpayers. We want you to be able to use the system the way the system was designed. It can help you turn what we used to call funny money into real money and change the way you plan in the future using charitable planning devices. You can learn more about social charity devices at socialcharity.org. Please tune into route664.org/radio and listen to our phenomenal music selection. The music is awesome, and the talk is also pretty good. And the features, especially Charity. Charity is an amazing character with her wizards, Chigaro, Pithecus, and Cratius, and they do amazing things in the community to change things. The Adventures of Charity. You can hear those on Route 664 as well. Thank you for joining us here on Route 664, the Road to Human Kindness. and we'll see you again next week. Have a great week.